Since I started learning foreign languages back in middle school, there's one thing that has always bothered me, intensifying in recent months. It may very well frustrate you too, and yet I'm afraid there's little we can do about it. And that thing is how we speak. Hello, my name is Christopher and welcome to Ling, Linguistics for the layperson. Except today we're going to dive pretty deep, so it might be helpful to first watch the previous videos in this series about foreign accents and the critical period hypothesis. In short, the CPH refers to the proposed window of time during childhood to acquire language. So, now I'd like to combine those two topics, examining how acquisition of phonology fits within the hypothesis. More specifically, how our mental and physical ability to articulate speech sounds is affected by age. Perhaps my favorite subject in all of linguistics. Let's start with my own foreign language videos. If you know these languages, you can probably understand almost everything I say. Certainly for Spanish, where my pronunciation is better than my Portuguese pronunciation, which is better than my Italian pronunciation, which is better than my French pronunciation. But that's also the order in which I studied these Romance languages. Perhaps with time I could bring them all to the same level. However, I also recognize that no matter how proficient I become in any of these languages, no matter how accurate my pronunciation becomes, I will always have a foreign accent. Hypothetically, I could spend the rest of my life living and working in Milan, perhaps achieving native-like competence in Italian grammar, syntax and vocabulary, and yet I would almost certainly retain in my speech hints of where I came from. And this really bothers me, but not for the reason you might expect. It's not because I wish to sound like a local to better fit in, like most people I presume who seek accent reduction. No, I've never been one to prefer blending in, frankly. Instead, it's because I place a lot of value, perhaps too much, in linguistic prowess, and this is an intellectual feat that, I'm sorry but it's true, people I know to be less smart than I can accomplish simply by dint of their fortunate multilingual upbringing. When interacting with simultaneous bilinguals, which you can learn more about in a video last week, I am often just overcome with jealousy. But it's not so much for their proficiency, which I feel is theoretically still within my grasp with enough effort, but of their ability to speak the language natively, meaning with the proper accent and pronunciation. You see, I could spend the rest of my life foolishly trying to speak Spanish like I grew up in Puerto Rico, but to no avail. I just can't do it. And so, I've said this before and I'll say it again. If you can speak 2 or more languages natively, please be grateful, because at this point, there are few things I wouldn't give up to have that same skill. Okay, so now let's get into the why I can't do it. In Thursday's video, I commented the following on where I believe the critical period hypothesis is best applied. And where the CPH holds up best, I think, is in the realm of phonology, where there might really be a hard window for natural pronunciation. So, what did I mean by that? Well, the theory is still an ongoing debate, especially regarding second language acquisition. However, it does appear that while the window for learning a new language never completely closes, some aspects of acquisition are clearly affected by age, chief among them being phonology and pronunciation. As mentioned in another video, the vast majority of adult learners speak with a detectable foreign accent, subtle as they might be, and I explained why this is so without getting into the CPH, instead discussing uncommon phonemes and how older learners have a natural tendency to subconsciously substitute difficult sounds with more familiar sounds from their native language. We also discussed fossilization, how such non-standard pronunciation habits become ingrained in your speech patterns over time. All of that is true, of course, but now I'd like to root it in the theory. You see, the fact that foreign accents primarily affect older learners, not children in immersive environments, would strongly suggest that pronunciation is susceptible to the critical period. And the CP for learning phonology might be even earlier than for morphemes and syntax. Children learn the sound system of their native language or languages very early on. In fact, before some children even begin uttering words, their brain has already begun to perceive speech only in terms of the native language's phonemic categories, ignoring sounds that the brain doesn't recognize. And now we must dive even deeper. I hope you're still with me as we get to the crux of the matter. You see, pronunciation relies on something called neuromuscular function, how the brain controls the 100+ muscles involved in producing human speech via the places of articulation along the vocal tract. And of course, we have more control over some of these muscles than others. Now, there are two different types of long-term memory in the brain, declarative and procedural memory. These are also known as explicit and implicit memory, respectively. The former can be declared or recalled and is used for remembering facts and events. It's what you use to prepare for an exam, for instance. And then there's procedural memory, which relates to, well, procedures that have become second nature over time, skills that don't require conscious awareness, like walking or chewing or producing speech sounds. This is what you use when referring to muscle memory. Okay, so as neuroplasticity declines over time, procedural memory fades, and it becomes more difficult to get really good at tasks that require this implicit muscle memory. I'm sure you've observed this yourself. It's why you're best off picking up a new sport or musical instrument when young. Anyway, as this happens, declarative memory starts to take over and is thought to become more involved in activities like language learning. Do you see where we're going with this now? The decrease of procedural memory makes it increasingly difficult to adopt the many subconscious procedures involved in neuromuscular function and fine motor skills. Thus, it takes conscious, deliberate effort of a declarative type to correct for speech irregularities, like the th alveolarization we discussed earlier. But it's virtually impossible to do this during extended conversation when you're relying on hardwired pronunciation habits. Combine this with fossilization and you've got yourself an indelible foreign accent. Now that's a complete explanation. So, in summary, when older children or adults learn a new language, not only can they not discriminate well between new speech sounds, but they are typically past the age of sufficient procedural brain plasticity to adopt the neuromuscular memory that would allow them to articulate a long series of sounds like a native speaker. There's no mind over matter here. You're both. It's both causing you to speak with a foreign accent. And you can do only so much to change this. That's why it's called accent reduction, not accent elimination. And of course, this applies directly to me. I think I can mimic some individual words perfectly, but when I deliver an entire paragraph in front of the camera, it's obvious to anyone that I'm not Mexican, or Brazilian, or Italian, or French. I am hindered by these same forces beyond my control. So, when I meet someone who has mastered the phonology of 2 or more languages from childhood, I just want a copy of that little part of their hindbrain that allows them to do that. So forgive me if I'm a bit obsessed with you. It's just I want a piece of your cerebellum, that's all. Alright, well that's it for January. I resume university tomorrow, so I won't be nearly as active, I'm afraid. But I'll definitely try to continue making videos about linguistics and other topics of interest. I'd like to return to making foreign language videos as well. Please leave a like if you enjoyed this video and let me know in the comment section if you agree with this analysis. As always, my sources are in the description, and with that, thank you so much for watching.